Hey flower friends, welcome to this week's DIY segment here at Flowers for Dreams. I'm Kyle and today we're going to be working with a myriad of stems, so it's a very full look, and we're working on how to achieve a wildflower or a fresh garden picked look. So in the middle of summer here in the Midwest, many of you who have gardens can oftentimes be culling blooms out of those gardens, or even if you have a nice planter box, you can be picking things out of those spaces as well to create small floral notions. So what I wanted to go over today is achieving that farmy, fresh, sort of wildflower appealing look with some commercial styled stems. So today, in order to achieve that, we have two styles of greens. One is a tree fern. This is also called asparagus fern. This is indicative of it really is what asparagus looks like when it grows out, and you see those flumes out in the ditches. If you're rural like I was when I was a kid, you could find asparagus patches growing wild all over Iowa, which is where I'm from. Spoiler alert. So asparagus does look a lot like this, but the reason we're including it in this today is because it has a little bit more longevity than most wild grasses do. So this fern will hold up and give us sort of that grassy textural appeal without having an actual grass in the vase, because the grass is something that does tend to fail a little bit ahead of the blooms. So we have that going on for us. And then I have this foliage. This is called cocculus. Now cocculus is a really wonderful waxy tropical foliage. However, it does have a really interesting leaflet that is a teardrop shape and sort of is appealing in the fact that it looks like a lot of bushes, hedges, or wild weeds that grow in the Midwest without actually being one of those things. So this has a lot of longevity. It's not going to fail like some of our local foliages will. Oftentimes when you're using local foliage or local blooms, they do tend to only have a vase life of approximately 3 days before they really start to turn downhill, so their longevity is not quite there. So these are all commercial stems that we're using to achieve the look. Now, a big star in a wildflower look or a farm look is Queen Anne's lace. This does grow wild all across the Midwest and actually across many regions of the United States as a whole. This Queen Anne's lace was brought in from California, so we do utilize farms in California to provide us with wildflower stems. We can get it locally this time of year. The local Queen Anne's lace does look a little bit more wily. It has a more firm stem because it is kind of stronger from wintering so harshly and then growing so quickly. So it has a little bit more of a thicker stem, but this has a little bit of a finer stem, which is how we know kind of the region it came from. Then we have just a spray rose. I like to use spray roses because they sort of look like wild roses. So being from Iowa, again, our state flower was a wild rose, which grows along low terrains and gravel roads all over the place. They're very fragrant, they're very beautiful, but this sort of has that same appeal. Or it can look like a tea rose if you have tea roses growing, or if you had grandmothers that had tea roses. They tend to be bushier and have more sprays on them, so this is just something that has a little bit more of a garden appeal than just a normal standard rose. Then we have this yarrow. So yarrow is really fantastic. This is a hybrid cultivated yarrow. This yarrow, we used to grow it in gardens when I was young. I love the fragrance of it. It really reminds me of home. I can always, just takes me back to that place. But there is a wild variety of yarrow that grows very noxiously all over. And if you do have that variety of yarrow, it's called cottage yarrow. And that yarrow, if you were to dig it and move it, say from a wild space into your garden, it will take over like a mint would. So if you're gonna plant some of that, you really do have to put a deep tin in the ground to prevent the roots from spreading. Likewise, as you're carrying it to your garden, if you're planting wild yarrows, any place you drop a root, it will grow there. So in your yard, along any space that it can possibly take root, it will. So it is very noxious. This one, however, is not noxious. It grows in a nice, firm bush, is really fantastic, has a wonderful fragrance. Then we have included a dahlia. Now, dahlias, yes, not a wildflower, it is a bulb. You have to dig the bulb every single year, so this does require a lot more work and labor than some of our other blooms. But like I talked about 2 weeks ago, you can grow things like this, like callas, cannas, dahlias. All of them have a similar sort of thing going on where they have a bulb that won't winter. You have to dig the bulb, put it in a dry, cool, space and let it dormant over the winter, and then you have to replant those bulbs. So if you're cultivating dahlias, they do really love this zone. They really love the sun, they love the rain that we get here. So in the Midwest, dahlias do grow really well if your soil is right, or if you're watering them well enough, and you can pot grow dahlias if you have enough sunlight. So they do like direct, bright, full sun, and you'll get a really nice strong dahlia. So this is something that we do grow in the Midwest, and it's a farm favorite. Then we have this Solidago. Like, we've covered Solidago many times. It's in the goldenrod or the ragweed family. This is commercial Solidago, so it doesn't have the same allergenic properties that a wild ragweed would, but I love it because it gives us that same essence of, you know, being like a wildflower without being truly wild. Then we have a little bit of stock. Now, stock I always like to put in bouquets like this because this is fragrant, and if you smell it, it just has a really beautiful, sweet sort of honeysuckle nose to it. Stock is something though that doesn't have a really long vase life. So in about 4 days, you're gonna be done with your stock. So as we know, in 3 days time, you can start to clean off some of the lower blooms if you wanna keep it around when you go to change your water. In 4 to 5 days, it's gonna be completely done. So you will have to edit this arrangement just a little bit because we have stems in here that will dry and last a really long time. Like the yarrow will dry really nicely. So for those of you that are saving these stems, hanging them upside down and drying them for future projects, yarrow is a really good one to do that with. Likewise, the spray rose, it dries really beautifully. Stock can dry, but it looks a little, looks like it died on the vine just a little bit. So it maintains pretty good color, but it's not the perfect candidate for a dried arrangement. Larkspurs, delphiniums, things like that are really great for dried arrangements. Stock will dry, but not that great. Put it in here, again, like I said, for some fragrance. And then last up, we have some sunflowers. So if you're out traversing Michigan or Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, wherever you are, you will see oftentimes full fields of sunflowers. And sunflowers are really fun in the summertime because they do in fact follow the sun. So if you photograph a field of sunflowers in the morning, they'll be all facing east, and as the day progresses they follow the sun, and at dusk they'll all be facing west, which is really incredible when you think about it. It's a fun thing to do, so just take that in mind. If you're on a summer road trip, you can kind of take that in. But sunflowers is something that we seed. It's really great, and birds help out with the seeding of it. If you let it go to seed, you can grow all kinds of varieties of these. So this is really fantastic. It's just happy, it's fun, it just feels like summertime. So I love to include sunflowers. This is a mini sunflower, so it's quite petite, so it's not gonna detract from my other focal bloom, the dahlia. So today, we're gonna start with our foliages. So this cocculus is a little difficult because what we want to do is we want to get as much bang for our buck. I only gave you 2 stems, so it's going to be a challenging week this week, so we can stem split this just a little bit. So I'm trying to maintain the bottom maybe 2, maybe 3 leaves. On this one, it's going to be the bottom 2, and then I'm going to go ahead and remove some of these leaves. Now, I am removing more of the leaves than I am saving. However, I'm going to get the look that I want because I'm going to be able to spread leaves in 4 different directions if I stem split. So that way I have some this way, some that way, some this way. Right, so I'm going to do the same thing with my next stem of cocculus. Looks like on this piece I'll be able to maintain a few more of those bottom leaves, but I'm just going to go ahead, take off some of those, right, so they're not going to quite hit the bottom of the vase, but I do have that nice tip. Now when we're looking for pieces that are about the size of our hand, maybe a little bit larger, they can be a little bit smaller, but for the scale, size, and scope of our vase and our arrangement, we do want to kind of adhere to that rule of thumb, which I know you guys are getting really good at. You know, I just noticed the other day that we passed episode 100 and I forgot to mention it. So this is actually episode 102. So for those of you that have been with me for a really long time, I know that you're becoming super pros at this style of arranging, at these types of vase arrangements. But you know, we've got some fun things coming up for you in the next series of 100 videos. So here we are, we've got our cocculus in there. Let's go ahead and get our tree fern in there so we can have a good structure to start inserting some of our stems. So I'm leaving this tree fern up just a little bit higher. I do want it to sort of just be wild, be Riley, and then sneak attack. I'm going to utilize, instead of a filler, I'm going to utilize my Solidago as sort of a green to fill in. So sometimes we utilize the floral to be space fillers when we don't have enough greens in our vase. So I'm just going to go ahead, insert these early on in the process so that I can really get a nice feel for how full my arrangement's going to be. Now, with Solidago, what I want to do is sometimes I remove some of these smaller leaves, just a few of them. The leaves are very delicate, they're really thin and papery, and so what they will do is they will tend to fail early on in the life cycle of your vase arrangement. So I edit some of those out just a little bit, just so that I don't have as much maintenance to do when I go to take this arrangement and change the water and do all of that, because I'm going to have enough work with my stock coming up in the next few days. So I gave you 3 pieces of yarrow. Let's go ahead and just keep the theme going. I'm going to go in with my yellow heads here and just keep those going. I've got these. I'm just going in at that 45-degree angle. You can see that I'm really trying to maintain that that angle, because when you're making a round arrangement, you do want to be able to see the face of the flower, especially if you're seated at a dinner table or something along those lines. So we really want it kind of angled slightly outward, unless we are very intentionally putting it directly up in the vase. So for our first few insertions, I do tend to go in at about a 45-degree angle. That way I can really get sort of my stem crossing going on in my vase, which is a natural mechanic for holding your stems in place. Now, because I have 3 yarrows, I have 1, 2. The third one I'm going to place probably up a little bit higher and slightly to the side, just so it has a little bit of organic play to it, a little bit of something unexpected. So I'm just going to drive that in at a slightly less of an angle, but I don't want it standing straight up. I do want it leaning slightly to the side, just so it looks very natural, very nonchalant. That way you can achieve a look that doesn't look so contrived. It looks very sort of fun and flirty, which we love. Now, next up, I am going to go in with my stock, because it's another good space filler. We do remove all the foliage from stock. The foliage will turn yellow in about 2 days' time, even before the bloom is done. So we want to remove all that foliage. I'm just going to slide that stock in. Now, because this is a linear bloom, you have to decide if you want it up, if you want to group it, if you want some of it coming out the side. I think I'm just going to go a nice even keeled mix here. I see a hole on this side right over here, so I'm just going to go in at that nice 45-degree angle, right? So let's just get that sliding right in the side there. And then if I want to balance my arrangement, I'll probably just come out the bottom side over here with that. So go ahead and take off that foliage. I'm just peeling it back. You can use your thumb and forefinger, just run it down the stem. That's an easy way to strip those stems. Yes, we do call it stripping when you remove foliage from a stem of floral. I know there's a lot of professions that use the word stripping, and this is how we use it. We take away those leaves, right? So when you're stripping in other professions, you take away something, right? So just so you know, that's how we use it as well. So here we go. We've got a really nice base going on, and you can see here that there's plenty of floral matter and plenty of color going on that we didn't need as many leaves. So really what the cocculus is doing is it's creating a nice collar down here at the bottom. Our asparagus fern is filling negative space up in the airy areas, and then we have all these other blooms that we can go in with. So we're going to go in with this spray rose next, okay, this beautiful fuchsia spray rose. There's 2 varieties. There's hot majolica and there is supernova. This is a hot majolica, I can tell. Supernovas have a larger cupped head. This is a little bit more dainty, a little bit more petite. So I'm just going to go ahead with roses. We want to give them a nice angled cut. Now be sure you're leaving about a foot there to get it up above some of this floral, because I do want to really sort of build my arrangement upwards, right? So I'm sliding it at an angle. Now you have to also account for the fact that when you stand your stem next to the vase and you're cutting, you might be going in at an angle, and that's going to take away some of your linear inches, right? So when you're cutting that stem and you stand it up, it might look a little too tall, but once you go in at an angle, it will kind of fall into the right place when you're getting your groove on and really getting into your rhythm of arranging. So let's get these sunflowers in. Now sunflowers are a little bit challenging in the fact that oftentimes they have what I like to call a bit of personality. So right here we've got this great sunflower. He's facing this way and a little bit that way. So what I have to do, so he doesn't look like he's drooping, because if I put him in at an angle with this going that way, he's gonna look like he's maybe wilting just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just gonna give him his cut. I'm going to sort of decide where I want him in the arrangement, but I might angle him slightly upward so he looks like he's happy and not sad. So here I am going in at my angle, and I'm just sort of driving that sunflower in. Now what's going to happen is it's going to correct itself to sort of pull its way across the arrangement, but as you can see, by placing it against itself in the arrangement, I've achieved seeing the happy face of the sunflower rather than going straight in and letting that sort of droop make a sad face in my arrangement, which I wanted to avoid here. That also likewise, when it pulled across the arrangement, created some negative space here. We've saved this great Queen Anne's lace because this is a very forgiving medium, and we can cover that bit of ugly stem here with a piece of Queen Anne's lace, and it will totally mask that for us. Now, this next one is a little bit more on a happy, good place as far as like its head placement is concerned, so I don't have to compensate by rotating upwards as much as the last one, but I might rotate it slightly to the side, and that way I'll be able to still see that happy face kind of going there. So here we are. I've got my two sunflowers placed in here. This is also providing me with sort of a strong back to my arrangement because I put two of my focal blooms facing front. So if you're ever curious about what side an arrangement is supposed to be facing, oftentimes a designer will face the more prominent or the dominant blooms, the focal blooms, towards one side, and then you know that's sort of the front. So if you're sort of sussing out somebody else's work, you can sort of assess them that way. However, if I wanted to balance this arrangement, I might take this focal bloom and put it on the back side here so that I have something all the way around. Especially when you're designing in 360, you always have to be thinking, am I gonna see something here? Am I gonna see something here? Well, I see something here, and I don't want the thing that you see to be a hole. That's right. So we wanna just make sure that we're filling all that negative space with a beautiful bloom so that you have a very well thought, thorough, round arrangement. So I'm just gonna slip this dahlia in on the back side so I have a focal bloom that's over there, which creates importance on this side of the arrangement, right? So I have my sunflowers kind of hanging out this way and that. So I'm just gonna take this Queen Anne's lace. I'm gonna decide what pieces of this I can use, how I can use it, if I'm gonna stem split or not. And honestly, this looks just a little bit too short for me to stem split. So I do think that I have to use the whole piece, which is a little unfortunate because when I put it in, it's gonna squash together, and maybe that's okay, I don't know. Maybe it's not. So if I wanted to be adventurous and if I wanted to spread the love a little bit, I might stem split it right here and use this piece, but really sink it into that water. Be sure you get a good deep insertion because you don't want these flowers all drinking the water and this guy to be left out in the cold, right? I don't want to be, or the dry as it were, because if it is left out of water, the stem will seal, and that's when you get your wilting to happen. So if you have shallow insertions, that's where you run into problems. So I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna give this guy a clip. I'm gonna remove some of this lower foliage because it's gonna turn yellow like some of the others we know. And I'm just gonna sort of decide where I want this beauty sort of in my arrangement, and I think right over here complementing this side of the dahlia is going to be just fine. That way I'm sort of rounding out this edge over here. Now I know that I said that I was going to maybe cover up this back of the stem with a piece of Queen Anne's lace, but if I sort of rotate this little bit of yarrow, I can see that I can sort of mask that, and then it creates a little bit more space on this side for me to put this last piece of Queen Anne's lace, so I'm not just like leaving it all on one side of the arrangement. So I just want to distribute the love, right? Disperse everything sort of evenly. And then this way, you sort of get this really nice sort of playful rendition of blooms. It's sort of mildly sans greenery, but it is a 360 arrangement with focal blooms on all sides. It's utilizing commercial stems to really achieve that garden and wildflower look without actually having to go foraging. But if you wanted to go forage in some ditches, if on your commute home you spot some stuff in the weeds out in there, you have your clippers in your car, I'm sure, just like me, you can stop, pull over, clip some blooms, and just play around with those when you get home from a stressful day of work. So this is a really fun summer arrangement. I know you guys are gonna love it. If you have some pot gardens, or if you have, and by pot garden, I mean flowers that grow in pots, not actual pot, but good for you if you're growing that. That's fantastic. Your business is probably doing way better than some others in this economy. So here we are. We've got this beautiful arrangement. Go ahead, clip some stems, have some fun with it, build it to your liking. You can't go wrong when you have this many different varieties of things. Just distribute the love and you're gonna be just fine. Enjoy it and have a great, great week, you guys. I'll see you next time.